Well, good morning, friends. This is John Finnegan, and I'm here with a very good friend of mine by the name of Patrick Gaines. Patrick and I began working together when we worked at the American Cancer Society. I was responsible for planned gifts at that time, and Patrick was responsible on the major gift side of the work that we did. So that, Patrick, was like 2005 for you, right? I started in 2004. And Patrick today is the Chief Development Officer of the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver. Patrick, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Can you share, if you would please, a little bit about what you do today for the Boys and Girls Club as a starting point for this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Denver, which is part of a federated national federation of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. All of the local chapters are independent chapters, much like I think our experience at the American Cancer Society. So Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Denver is part of a national federation of Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And I have the privilege of serving, as you said, as Chief Development Officer. And in that capacity, my primary responsibilities are contributed income. I also help with government grants, private foundation grants, to fill the gap in out of school time and daytime programming for youth ages 6 to 18. And then I also have, which is a little bit of an extension of my previous roles, I also oversee the marketing and communications for the Boys and Girls Clubs. And so in that way, direct the sort of public voice of the Boys and Girls Clubs.
Hmm. How many young people do you serve here in
Yeah,
Metro Denver?
it's a great question. So let me answer that two ways. On March 1st of 2020, we were serving 10,000 active members in our clubs, which means that a family comes in and they open up a membership form. We ask them for $2 to become a member. It's not a dollar amount that is of great substance, but it puts a little bit of skin in the game for the family. So we had 10,000 active members on March 1st, 2020, and we were seeing about 2,500 kids a day. And
Wow.
today that number is closer to around 500 kids a day physically. And before we started this call, John, you and I were talking about the ever-changing social distancing requirements at the city level, county level, state level, and national level. And it's difficult. So the reason we are at such low numbers is that we are restricted to the number of kids we can physically see. So we are reaching out to those 10,000 other active members virtually, exactly the way we're doing this here. We have live virtual programming and static virtual programming, and then we help kids gain access to virtual classrooms during the daytime.
What is their requirement to be a member on the part of the kid and the parent or parents?
Yeah, we have a from an administrative standpoint, there's not much required. They fill out an application. I think we request some basic information on on just who they are, where they live, to make sure they're in the right zip code, because we have 24 clubs around the city. So we try to get them placed in the right physical location, but there really are very little in terms of requirements. And then again, the financial requirement is only $2. We don't try very hard to collect that $2 if it's a hardship for families. 94% of our families fall below the poverty line. And so we are there to make sure that their kids have access to healthy lifestyle choices. We help them with their academics, make sure they're staying at grade level or better. And then we engage them in character and leadership skills. So back to your question about requirements, once they're in the club, we have values, integrity, honesty, truth, respect. Those are requirements to maintain your membership, and that's always just a privilege and challenge to help kids adhere to those values. But we feel very strongly about those.
Mhm. So,
Boys and Girls Club, sorry to interrupt, John. I can't help it but give some context because this was new to me. Boys and Girls Clubs of America was founded in 1861, which blew my mind.
mhm.
And yeah, and here in Denver, Colorado, it was founded in 1961.
Yeah, I so firmly believe that that's what makes this country so interesting and effective, uh, ineffective in so many ways, but effective as well. And that's the integration of government, um, capitalism, business, and 501c3s, the non-governmental agencies that do this important work and have done so throughout the history of this country to make
Well
it
said.
what it is today. Hmm.
Well said. Well said, John. That's really well said. It is a Boys and Girls Clubs is much like several other organizations, national organizations in the country where, right, we've identified a gap. In 1861, it was, hey, there's boys. Let's face it, it was the boys club at that time, but there's boys out on the street rabble rousing. Let's give them a safe place to go.
Hmm.
And so it was a public-private partnership from day one. And today the problems are much larger than boys rabble rousing on the street. We have kids that are failing grade. We have kids that are being recruited into gangs. We have kids that are susceptible and vulnerable to unhealthy habits and behaviors. And so we work with government agencies to close those gaps. And those government agencies are everything from health departments, Health and Human Services, child welfare services, and then public schools. Public schools are really our biggest partner to say, let's join together to make sure we're really addressing the whole child.
How, how do you work effectively with other non-governmental agencies? Our dear friend Dr. Nate Howard, as an example, who runs the Lincoln Hills Cares Foundation. You guys have started working together. Why and how? How does that all work?
So I think the basic answer is we work with partners because we call them direct service providers because we cannot be all things to all kids or all
Right.
things to all people. So we have physical assets in the form of buildings with gymnasiums and science, technology, engineering, math rooms, art rooms, breakout rooms, places for the kids, computer rooms, and so forth, outdoor recreation spaces, you name it. And so we have the house and the building. Many of those we own, others we rent or partner with the public schools to use. And then we create programs. So again, the programs are academic success, healthy lifestyles, and character and leadership skills. And then we, underneath those three outcome areas, we have five fundamental programs: academics, science, technology, engineering, and math. Healthy lifestyles, nutrition, sports, and recreation. Okay. Well, below those five foundational programs, John, there are a multitude of ways to engage kids today. Everything from mobile devices to still the good old fashioned kicking a ball and hitting a ball with a stick. So we'll reach out to the community to say, let's bring in a dance partner. Let's bring in an ice skating partner to teach our kids ice skating. Let's bring in the case of Lincoln Hills, an rare outdoor experience to get kids into the outdoors. The thing they do is fly fishing, which is really quite fun. But really, the bigger impact is experiencing the outdoors in a real kinetic way, understanding terrain, understanding wildlife and the interaction between wildlife and humans. And Lincoln Hills is just a great example of one of those partnerships that we're very proud of.
Hmm. Were there any surprises when you went on staff with the Boys and Girls Club? Did anything really just sort of, was it unexpected? What popped out for you?
John, when I think I remember having this conversation with you in Tempe, Arizona, it was day one on the job for me with the American Cancer Society, and it was a conference, and you were one of my first friends and associates that really welcomed me, and I remember that just shock and awe of the depth and breadth of what the American Cancer Society does, and I had no idea. I just thought they, tried to keep people from smoking, and I don't know, handed out pamphlets at, clinics.
Yeah.
And so that's a different conversation for you and I to have at another time. So I had the same shock and awe coming into the Boys and Girls Clubs of America in Metro Denver. My perception was Boys and Girls Clubs was an after school gym, pretty much a place to drop in, shoot a few hoops before mom and dad or sister or brother or aunt or whoever got off work and could pick me up and take me home as a little kid. So to come in and see the way lives of young people are transformed by saying, hey, we know you are in a tough predicament.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your family has immigrated to the United States, isn't having trouble getting rooted. Maybe your family has fallen on hard times and really just doesn't have the resources available to you for things like food and shelter. And maybe you are a child of color who is being raised in an incredibly divisive time in our country and is wondering who to turn to
Mm-hmm.
for trust and guidance. Those that we were reaching, the Boys and Girls Clubs was reaching that deeply into kids' lives was truly inspiring to me. And it immediately shifted what I took on, frankly, as a job into something of great passion, and feel that it's the changes we're making in kids' lives are profound every single day.
Mm-hmm. You know, my day job is working with business leaders, CEOs in
Yeah.
particular, and so the big question I have for you is how can we as business leaders engage with the Boys and Girls Club to help it be more effective and to do what needs to be done? The obvious thing is
Yeah.
money, of course, that we donate our money, but what else? What else can we do?
So I'll start granular, and then I'll go up the funnel. So the granular is business leaders employ people. People, you may have a company that has 10 employees. You may have a company with 10,000 employees. And I love, back to kind of the beauty of philanthropy in America, I love the way that our country has embraced corporate social responsibility. So company leaders say, hey, we have a brand in the world or in our marketplace for the product that we bring, and we'd like that brand to not only reflect excellence but culture and giving back to the community, taking care of people. The basic definition of philanthropy is doing good for humankind. So corporate leaders are not only asking, how do we increase the bottom line for our shareholders, but how do we do good for our brothers and sisters, neighbors, friends, and family in our community? So to that extent, when COVID restrictions are released again, the Boys and Girls Club loves to engage employees. So we have opportunities for employees to come in and interact with the kids in dynamic ways, from sports and recreation activities to arts and craft activities. And we just absolutely love engaging companies and employees in that fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Another way, moving up that funnel then, that companies love to get involved is we love to share our brand with the brand of excellent corporations.
Mm.
So we've been around since 1861. We have a strong reputation. We have an incredible alumni base. Denzel Washington is one of the more, I think, known Boys and Girls Clubs graduates around the country. There's a long, really rich roster of interesting people. So we love to co-brand, and so we have great programs from sports to academics to healthy lifestyle and character that companies can co-brand with us, and their financial resources help us serve kids. And we like to think that our co-branding we help one another in our standing in the community. And then lastly, I would say this, and this was part of my aha moment. I don't know that people realize if a corporate, C-level executive were to ask their employees, tell me about the start of your day, you'd probably hear things like, well, I went to a coffee shop, or I stopped by a 7-Eleven, dropped off or picked up my dry cleaning. You would realize that your employees touch the service industry multiple times throughout the day, everything from those examples, dry cleaning, coffee shops, 7-Elevens, to driving on streets that are being constantly in a state of repair.
Mm-hmm.
Those service employees have families, and those kids need help and need support. And so the Boys and Girls Club is that part of that foundation to collect those kids and make sure that they're safe and getting every opportunity for success that the kids in Cherry Creek and the kids in some of our more affluent neighborhoods and counties in this area are have available to them. So my point is, large corporations employees touch the Boys and Girls Clubs in ways throughout their day that they don't even realize. When they engage in the community, and we want to have a healthy community, that means we all take care of each other, and we are taking care of those service industry workers who employers and employees rely upon every single day, myself included. I do all of those things, and I'm grateful that there's someone helping take care of the kids who provide services that we need on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, so your biggest need today is?
Oh, our biggest need right now on what is this, October 17th, 2021, is for us, our partners, our friends, our family to stay with us. I mean, John, that's what you and I are doing right now. We are in an unprecedented moment in our world, in our nation, in our local history. Everyone is a little bit frightened. Everyone is staring forward into the same fog of uncertainty.
Yeah.
um, there isn't any big sort of thing that we need to erect or construct to get us through. If that thing existed, I'd be a zillionaire because everyone would be looking for that magic solution. So we're saying to our friends, stay with us and we will stay with you. We are fully operational. We've been able to keep our staff more or less 100% intact. There were some part-time employees we weren't able to hire this our year is the academic year, so we did have to freeze some positions. We have had some modest furloughs that we've asked staff to take without pay, but it's enabled us to stay intact. So stick with us. If people are making contributions annually to the Boys and Girls Club, their dollars, more than ever before in our history, are going to work the minute the dollar passes to us. It goes right into a staff member's hands who's helping a child. And it's going to be a tough year, but I know that if we stick together, we'll get through it.
You used the expression shock and awe earlier here in 2020, and in February and March, we were all in shock in so many respects. But um, I hate to use the overused expression, the new normal, but I think we are figuring it out to a large degree, and it sounds like you guys are too. Your call is don't forget us. It's still important, and when we get to 2021 and we have a vaccine, we need to have that infrastructure in place to be able to deliver on those services then as well.
It is, and I'll put a shameless plug in here. If you go to Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Denver, there to our website, if you just Google Boys and Girls Clubs Metro Denver, there's a little feature called the CEO Corner. You mentioned corporate executives. So our CEO writes a blog once a month. And in her blog this month, she uses the phrase, change is our new true north.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about how we have, between March and in October, I feel it's almost as though we get up every day and we set our compasses on change and
Mm-hmm.
we follow it, because that literally has been our operations since March. Every day there is a shift in what schools are open, what aren't, how many people you can gather together, how many you can't, where do you wear your mask, where can you take your mask off, is there a reliable test, is there not a reliable test, are the symptoms up to date? It changes. And
Right.
so we have adopted change, yes, as our new true north, and we are stronger together than we are on our own. And we have lived that out in the last 7 months, that
I,
when we are with our partners.
I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Erin yet. Is her last name pronounced Porteous?
You got it, Aaron
Oh,
Porteous. Yeah.
okay, great. You had an exciting event in your life earlier this year, and that is you moved from the suburbs to the city of Denver. Um,
Yeah.
how's that been for you?
Terrific. I'm a city boy at heart. My life is in the city, and it always has been. For the last, oh my goodness, from Newark, New Jersey to Des Moines, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska, Denver, Colorado. I've always worked in the city, and yet I've lived in the suburbs for sort of family lifestyle choices. And so my son graduated. My son Christopher graduated from Chatfield High School 2 years ago. So he's a sophomore now at CU Boulder, University of Colorado in Boulder,
Yeah.
and that afforded me a chance to relocate into the city. His mother and I, enjoyed raising him in the suburbs, but my life now is in the city. So I've enjoyed it a lot. The one downside, of course, is that I moved in May. I bought in May of this year, and then I moved in July. And so meeting my neighbors has been from the porch in a wave.
Yeah.
Um, Different, instead of barbecues and after hours, get-togethers. But that's been okay. It's nice to be in the city. It has such a rich cultural diversity. I can walk places, and I'm just closer to the things that I do on a daily basis.
It's funny for me to hear you say I'm a city boy, because I think of you so much in nature. And in
Yeah,
fact, I would like, if it's okay with you, to put a link to the commercial you did with the University of Colorado.
sure.
Maybe attach it to the publishing of this video, because there you are as mountain climber. That's the Patrick Gaines that I know. And
Yeah.
so obviously I'm transitioning to wellness, and how we as business leaders continue to maintain our health, both mental and physical health, because we have very stressful jobs, and we want to perform at the highest level possible. You're the best person I know to have this conversation with. Talk a little
Thank
bit
you.
about how this transition has been for you and what you're doing to maintain your health.
Yeah, thank you, John. I appreciate that. One of the things that I learned a while ago, I years ago, I don't know that there was one moment or epiphany, but was there are a lot of outgoing, gregarious, externally facing leaders in our world, from actors to government leaders to politicians and CEOs and so forth, that on a personal level are truly introverted. And I would say that I fall into that category. As Chief Development Officer of the Boys and Girls Clubs, as a Major Gift Officer of the American Cancer Society, as the Executive Director of the Gates Center for Regenerative Medicine, I lived externally, professionally, but personally, I live a very quiet, sort of private life. And I think that's pretty common. And so what it tells me, and I think where we're going with this conversation is about some of the personal trauma that's occurred in my life recently, and is maintaining that balance between saying it's okay to sort of drain my batteries throughout the day. And I love it. I absolutely feel privileged to do the work I do, but I know also that it drains me. And where I then recharge my batteries is that more introspective work, that mindfulness work. And that mindfulness work, as you have correctly noted, has a lot to do with me being outdoors, for
Mhm.
sure.
It involves movement in this case.
It does, but also just communing with nature.
Hmm. Right. So, yeah, I mean, stress is something that all business leaders deal with, and
Yeah.
there you can go different directions with that. And but I think as a society, we're doing a better job of healthy ways of maintaining our health. And I we have different issues, you and I, and I am at the recording of this video 68 years of age. We would normally think of that as retirement age, but thanks to science and just the way we live our lives today, I'm hardly ready to retire in the next 10 or 15 years, maybe. But certainly not for another decade.
Yeah.
God willing, I'm vertical, and I think that will be the case. So mine has been more structural, and in fact, I'm going to put in a personal plug to you that the next time you do a 14er, I want to be with you. You know,
Nice.
I want to do that again. You know, having had 4 spinal surgeries in 18 months, that was a pretty difficult. That was trauma on my body. But I'm determined to not let that stop me or slow me down. And so far,
Yeah.
so good. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that with you, John.
thanks.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
so, talk about the commercial that you did and why you did it for the University of Colorado. What was that all
Yeah.
about?
It's fun, John, because so in October, oh my gosh, 2 years ago this month, I was at El Dorado State Park, El Dorado Canyon State Park. So if there's anybody listening who's not familiar with the Denver metropolitan area, that's a space between west of Denver, between Boulder and Golden, Colorado, actually. And it is a mecca for climbers. I mean, an international mecca for climbers. It is just stunning. And it literally, from Boulder, is a 10-minute drive, and from Denver, maybe a 30-minute drive. And so I was being filmed climbing some of that extraordinary, terrain. Now, what was I doing there? So I was there representing the University of Colorado Hospital. They were doing a series, and I think the series might be still going, called Live Extraordinary. And so they had 5 individuals that had overcome serious obstacles, health obstacles in their life that had really altered the course of their life. And for my story, the focus was on opiate addiction and overcoming opiate addiction following a spine tumor that I had that had literally paralyzed me from the neck down in 2014. And following a successful surgery to remove that spine tumor and regain my mobility, I'm going to say it, given the very odd sort of gift of chronic pain. So I have a condition called chronic regional pain syndrome, resulting from a traumatic spine tumor and the trauma of the surgery to remove that tumor, that has left me with my pain receptors turned on at all times. And so part of my journey through that from 2014 to today was not just the physical rehabilitation from the paralysis, but then the pain management. And that pain management eventually led to opiate addiction and drug misuse that put my life in a real, state of crisis.
Right.
And so that commercial was about my journey to live extraordinary and to face that head on and overcome it. And I'm very proud to share that story publicly, and to live in a day and age where we can do that, where we can share a story like that, where once, not so long ago, in yours and my lifetime, people who admitted drug addiction were locked up. And today, there's just tremendous amount of help available. And I'm very proud that the University of Colorado Health and the University of Colorado Medical Campus saw to it to celebrate those successes, not shame them.
Hmm. You know, giving back, as you and I both know, is an important part of the recovery process.
Yeah.
You know, I know a little bit about this too because my dad was an alcoholic, and you know, he had that disease at a different time, and so while he had Alcoholics Anonymous as a program to help him recover, it certainly wasn't. It was anonymous back then for a reason. I mean, you couldn't talk openly about these kinds of things
Correct.
as if no one knew. I mean, everybody in his, in his community knew that he was an alcoholic because of things that happened during the course of his disease. But I'll never forget that final step is the need to give back. And I think that's affected me today. Why I'm so proud to do the volunteer work I do today through Rotary and other things, because it's cathartic. It helps in our personal growth. It helps in our healing. Um, it's a real gift and an opportunity for all of us.
For sure. Absolutely.
And
And so, John, thanks for bringing that up. I really do appreciate it. The I think Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a 12-step recovery program, I would say is probably the seminal 12-step recovery program. And now there are recovery programs for all kinds of conditions out there. And, I think they were founded um, early in the 20th century, I think in maybe the early 1930s. And you're so right. Even then, it was still done in, sort of dark corners of our community where you didn't talk about it for fear of persecution, frankly, being
right,
fired, being ostracized, thrown out of churches, thrown out of families, in some cases put in jail.
right.
And so how far indeed we have come. To link it back, I think, to your not original, but to link it back to a statement you made about 10 minutes ago about just managing stress in our lives, and tying that, in my case, to addiction. What I've learned in the last, 7 years, 6 years since my traumatic spine injury tumor is, this addictive strain has run through me really my whole life. And it was the episode of a trauma and the, acceleration and abundance of drug use to compensate for pain that really pushed that addictive line over the edge. But I've learned that truly my management of stress, my management of personal insecurities, and of the maybe just some of the demons that we all carry with us. Fear of being, discovered as a fraud, for instance, is a very common one that people share. But also just the stresses of family life, the stresses. I am divorced. That was a trauma in my life 15 years ago. The stresses of work, and the stresses of society. Yeah, uh, my propensity has been to turn to ways to compensate through substances that would mask that, and that's not uncommon. And this episode for me really pushed it over the edge. So my recovery from all of that is not a one and done moment. If I go out and I sprain my ankle, I get a brace put on it, I get it x-rayed, the swelling goes down, the tissue repairs, I go through physical rehab, and I'm done. I go back and I'm good. Recovery from an active addiction, in my case, substance abuse, it's a lifelong journey. And so I'm committed to that balance in my life of finding new healthy ways to manage stress, to manage chronic pain, that is sustainable in a way that substances are not.
Yeah, right. You know, it it's why in the work we do with senior leaders, we talk about the need to get away once a month to work
Mm,
on your business rather than in your business. Um, but it's not just about the business. It's more importantly about the individual, that executive who is responsible for so many families that count on him or her to deliver each and every day. The demand for that is enormous. And so, yeah, on the surface, we talk about working on your business, but it's really about the focus on the individual and what his or her needs are as an individual. And there are, so many programs that are available, so many great books written, and it's about sharing with each other, and that requires that we as individuals have the capacity to be vulnerable. And
yeah,
you and I had to learn that over a long period of time. And I think sometimes people need to be coaxed to be vulnerable because our society historically has not given us permission, especially as men, to be vulnerable. So,
Correct.
yeah.
No,
How
that
did you
is,
develop that?
yeah, I appreciate that. There was, I remember, going back to my spine surgery. So it happened in the middle of the night back in 2014. I woke up and half of my body was paralyzed, and I went into a state of shock. I was home alone, and I managed to get to my phone and dial 911, and they dragged me out. And there was just the next 24 hours are kind of a blur to me, but one thing I remember, and you were there for me, by the way, John. So I will always remember how you came there to support my family and support me in that moment of crisis. And then I remember my son. I think you might have been in the room. My son standing at the doorway while I was in the intensive care unit, hooked up to wires and tubes, and probably ghostly white. And that 10 feet that he walked from the door to my bedside, I remember how agonizing that was for him. And the image then is the same image today, was that my young teenage son had seen Superman's cape come off. So I was his dad, his superhero, his fierce warrior out there in the world who was invincible. And suddenly there was dad lying on a bed, unable to move, his life being literally managed through machinery, and how hard and painful that was. And so, right, you're absolutely right. We have an image as dads, as men, as executives to uphold. And again, I'm so immensely grateful that we live at a time where we are able to voice that, where we are able to speak about that. I'll put out a plug. The University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus has a center called the Johnson Depression Center. And the Johnson Depression Center is not only an acute treatment center for people coping with mental wellness and mental illness, but it has a strong outreach arm to normalize conversations around mental wellness. And this is me paraphrasing. Certainly, I'm not a professional. I'm just, layperson like you, doing the best I can. But if we go out and we have a chronic headache, or feel pain in our chest, or back to the mechanical issue of a bum knee or a sore shoulder, nobody thinks twice about seeing the doctor and getting help.
Right.
And so they are normalizing that process of saying, hey, depression is real, anxiety is real, feelings of a momentary loss of motivation, and that feeling of hopelessness, all real. Let's talk about it. And let's also talk about the ways in which we sometimes draw on unhealthy behaviors to compensate for that. So yes, that, for my son to see the cape come off, not only from a chronic or a almost fatal illness of a spine tumor, to then the cape, continue to slip off dad's shoulders as I worked to overcome pain and substance abuse. That was a tough journey. I believe it's made my son stronger and more resilient. And I share my story for that same reason. My hope, John, in doing that commercial for the University of Colorado Health, and I'm going to be, I think, on a pain blog here coming up in a week or two. I periodically get invited to speak about my experience. My hope is that at least one other person says, I feel that too. That's my experience too. I didn't know it was okay to talk about it. If Patrick Gaines can talk about it, maybe I can too. That's definitely a part of my mission, is to try to normalize it and let people know it is okay to speak out loud and get help.
The metaphor of Superman, Patrick Gaines, for those watching and listening to this video, um, it's very appropriate. I mean, you are a world-class athlete, and you, from Mont Blanc to 100-mile races, you've done it all. And yeah, I'm sure Christopher did see Superman in the face of kryptonite. You were yeah, in a difficult place, but you're in a beautiful place today with this
Thank you,
new
Josh.
home, this relatively new job, this work that you do in this community. I just want everyone to know how grateful we are for all that you do, Patrick, in giving back. I know that it is a necessary part of your healing and your personal and professional growth. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you, John. That means the world to me. This is a saying I think that is adopted by many different ideologies, and so I don't claim, certainly I don't claim it, and I don't claim that it belongs necessarily just to recovery. But the saying is that we only keep the gifts and the blessings that we have by giving them away. And again, I know a lot of people believe that in different forms. And so what you've just shared with me is validation and confirmation of that belief that I have, that I only can keep the gifts that I have that are so abundant if I give them away. And I, I do commit myself every day to doing a better job of giving away those gifts. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thanks for being here with me today. I will put these links. I think maybe the Depression Center ought to be added along with the Living an Extraordinary Life and the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver. Let's put all those links in with this video as I post it on LinkedIn here on Monday.
Thanks,
All right.
John.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right. Have a great day.
Bye for now.